Falcon and Winter Soldier Episode 1 New World Order. So before we get into this review, I want to note for anyone who might randomly be coming across the channel here, you might notice there's a lot of empty space here. Next week, I will have my Captain America Hot Toys figure. Hot Toys are 1/6 scale figures. If you're a collector, you should look into them because they're super cool. I also apologize because they're also like $200 and stuff. They're like really expensive, super cool toys. That's pretty much it. But that'll be here next week. That's why there's this really weird like that's how my spacing is. So it'll be like, why is there all this open space with just brown pillow? That's why. So next week we'll have something, and this is so tiny it would basically look like a pea if I put it over here. So I was like, it has to just sit on the table. So that doesn't matter to you, but that's what's gonna happen next week. So look forward to that if you come back. Also, with the shirt being the only other thing I have that's Captain America related, I would like to ask you guys right off the top, what do you think about the Winter Soldier not having the silver arm? Because as soon as they introduced the black arm, which I believe was technically at the end of Black Panther, I was like, it's not as cool. And I believe they did it because it costs money to have a giant silver arm, which is basically a mirror. And it's like, all right, we have to have a CG reflection of this and that because every time he fights, it's not always going to be him. Like, you know, they do super-based things. Sometimes it's a CG version. So then they'll have to do CG reflections and stuff like that. And sometimes you still have to do CG reflections because technically you're recording a really reflective surface. And I think that's why they changed his arm to black and gold. But it just doesn't look that cool. Like the full silver arm, that is it. Honestly, it's one of the most iconic things I think in the Marvel universe. Like when it comes to character designs, it's a giant silver arm with a red star on it. Like even if he takes the red star off, it's a giant silver arm. You cannot ignore that. It's so cool. I just wanted to throw that out there in the beginning before getting into the episode. What are your thoughts on that? Because I've never really had the chance to ask that because I've never had anything truly focused, on the Winter Soldier. But just want to throw that out there. It looks cool, but it's nothing compared to like a full silver arm. But getting into the actual episode, which is why you're here, I loved it. I thought it was a really good first episode. Obviously, coming off of WandaVision, there are a million different things that happen in that show that was just like, what's going to happen here? Who's going to show up there? What does this mean? What does that mean? I think this will be 98% more straightforward. I think the only thing we need to figure out is, will Sam get super poor, and what is Baron Zemo going to do? That's about it. Those are the two theories. Like, will Sam get some money, and what's going to happen with Baron Zemo? So I like the show so far. I think they did a really good job. I like that it was actually so calm. I mean, we have a really bombastic action sequence, which was, I think, in the very first official trailer that they had. And I thought that was going to be, I think everyone thought the same thing. I was like, okay, that's going to be episodes in. That's going to be like one of their big sequences that they kind of build up to later on. And they're like, no, we got to hook people. So episode 1, Sam goes in and is just like, okay, got to rescue this soldier that's been kidnapped by Batroc. I think it's Batroc is his name, the Leaper. But the guy that was actually fighting back, like the one dude that ended up living out of like the dozen people I think he killed in that opening sequence. Like if you haven't seen Snyder Cut, this won't make sense. But Falcon and Wonder Woman should probably team up. That's not really possible, but they clearly have the same mindset on villains. So he goes through and it's like, all right, he tried plan A, which was like, all right, I'm going to go in, I'm going to punch some people, knock everybody down. It's cool. They're shooting at me. I'm going to, bring my wings in, block some bullets. They had to do the classic thing. Like, you can't have a fight in a plane, apparently, without killing the pilot from a ricochet bullet. That's what it is. They did change it, though, because he got killed. And I was like, oh, okay, here we go. Here's the, the plane dive sequence. And then it was like, boop, autopilot. And it just balanced out. And I was like, oh, all right, I guess it's normal. I guess it's fine. I think technically the plane is just flying in the air now. I didn't think of that while I was watching it, but they all left because they technically knocked him down, and then they all just left. So that plane is just like flying with a dead guy in the seat, I guess. So they all take off because they knocked him down. He's like, oh, here we go. Now I got to follow these idiots. So they're jumping out in wingsuits, which that in itself is absolutely insane. Like, you can't do that with no skill. Like, they're flying, like them going left and right. That's not easy. You have to have a lot of strength to, like, have a wingsuit just open with that wind, like, coming at you. But it was super cool. I love the sequence, and he's going through, and it's like, okay, I got, a helicopter just, like, I swear, like, 3 extra helicopters just, like, appeared. It was like they spawned in the video game, and it was just like, oh, man, there's a helicopter behind me now. I was like, you've been flying straight for like the last 2.5 minutes. Where did the helicopter come from? But I liked it. And then it was just, he blew up a bunch of people. Like everybody died except the Leaper. Like, and that's the dude from Winter Soldier, the guy that Captain America fought in the very beginning of Winter Soldier, who's like the only person he didn't like one shot kick in the face or something. That's that guy, same guy. He's also an MMA fighter, I believe, which is why once again he had actual skills to show off. So they had him actually fight back, as where everyone else was just like boom, punch to the face, kicked out a door and stuff like that. He was the one to fight back because he's an actual character from the comics as well, even though I don't think they use that name in Winter Soldier or here. But he also lives at the very end, so they could still bring him back later in the series, which I'd be curious to see if they'll do that, because they've used him twice now, and I'm pretty sure they still didn't even use him, call him by his name in the episode. So it would be interesting if they officially do that later in the series. But that was really cool. Like, he's going through, we see Red Wing come off, and Red Wing starts off blowing up a ship, and then Sam was like, "Oh, I should kill all these other people," and that's what he does. He's just like, "I'm gonna grab this guy. I'm gonna stick a bomb on him. He's dead. I'm gonna hit this guy in midair and just throw him into a cliff. He fell to his death. He's dead. He didn't regain consciousness. I'm gonna fly into the helicopter." I think there were two moments, because I think they were in the first helicopter, and then there was a second time. It was the second helicopter he got in, because he like shot through and grabbed the guy, and then he threw the bomb on the helicopter. But he kicked one guy out of the first helicopter, I believe, and then they were trying to take off and fighting and stuff, and they was like, okay, now I gotta go through and I gotta get to the second helicopter, and he just shot through, and then I think he just threw a bomb behind him on the second helicopter, and the Leaper got out, and then the helicopter blew up. But they blew up like 4 or 5 helicopters. Everybody's dead. He had to have killed like 24 people. Very interesting scene. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. Like, he's just flying back and forth. He's got, tons of cool skills. Like, typically it's like, Falcon's the dude that flies. But when we see him on a solo mission, it's not like he's surrounded by Captain America or, it's not Civil War where it's like 8 other superheroes fighting. It's just the Falcon. And it was really cool. Like, he clearly has some legit skills. And I like that we got to actually see that. Not that I doubted it, but it was cool to see him kind of just in a situation by himself where it was like, okay, only I can handle this because I'm the only person here. So we actually got to see that, and I thought that was nice. And then we had another action sequence later, which was a flashback for Bucky, where he's the Winter Soldier. And I was like, okay, so they're showing something. And as soon as that arm, came through, because at first I was like, oh, it'd be kind of cool if somebody just like grabbed this dude out the back. I just assumed they were setting up for something else, and then it ended up being a flashback, and an arm actually came through the wall, pulled this guy through, and he's just killing people left and right. And I'm like, oh, this is a flashback, because obviously he had the silver arm. So I like that sequence. And then when it gets to the end, he kills his target. He says Hell Hydra, of course. And so then it's like, there's this random dude who's just freaking out. He's naturally guns blazing, people just dying. You're like the last person in this hallway as he's like slowly choking this dude out with a giant metallic silver arm, and then he just slowly kills this guy in front of you. He can't get that key in the door, and it's just like, oh no. Like, and of course he's like, I didn't see anything, but that doesn't matter because it's the Winter Soldier. Any witnesses, any possible anything that could ruin this, you got to be put down. And so of course shoots him in the face, and he wakes up, and then we have the psychiatrist scene, which I thought was a good scene. And it was also really funny when he's like, I'm doing okay, and she's like, that's utter bullshit, and he's like, you're a terrible shrink, and he's like, but I'm a good soldier, because she knew what he was dealing with. So I like that sequence. And then of course that's kind of the crux of this whole episode. Like, this first episode was outside of like that insane sequence in the beginning, and then of course Bucky getting his flashback action sequence. It was dramatic. It was serious. It was like, this is the real world. They talk a lot about the blip, which I love. I think I mentioned that even in WandaVision. I want so much content solely based on like the mental state of characters coming back from the blip or having lived through the 5 years. I say it every time it comes up. I hope Black Widow is literally within the 5 years of the blip. Like, that's all I want that movie to be, is where they just talk about the world and how it's like, it's all these things and all these people are gone. I just hope it's within those 5 years. That's legitimately one of my greatest hopes, is that movie takes place between Infinity War and Endgame. But we have to wait to see, of course. But I love that they talked about it. It's like, hey, I've been gone for 5 years. My sister's been here. I had, nephews that they were, just tiny little kids, and now they're like, little men. And so I was like, this is entertaining. They have to, talk about this stuff. Like, how do we survive? I had to survive when you were gone, when the world was weird. The world was half the people just gone. So it's interesting to see them come back, and everyone talking about, like, oh, this person sacrificed himself. They have the opening sequence, and I like that they had Rhodes was in this. I thought that was super cool. We got to see an appearance from Don Cheadle, and so they have Sam talking in the beginning where it's like, he sacrificed himself, and then they cut to him, and it's like he's just like, man, they both lost like their best friend, and I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool little nod where it's like, he sacrificed himself, and then they both have that thing. It's just that Tony Stark doesn't have like an iconic shield to put into the Smithsonian. So I love the way that was handled, like that little scene where it's like, oh, that's cool, and obviously the conversation about Sam not feeling like he can own up to being Captain America. That whole concept I thought was really cool. So I like that they had that moment, and then he's dealing with his normal life, and he's like, yeah, I'm Falcon, and I'm popular, but it's not like I got money. It's just like we got donations, I guess, as Avengers, and that's kind of about it. We didn't really get paid to save the world. We were just kind of doing it, and then they kind of supported us. That's about it. And mostly Tony Stark was supporting it as well. Like Shield had their own money that helped everybody, and then Tony Stark had his money. Shield is gone because of Hydra, and Tony Stark is gone because of death. So a lot of money kind of just blipped away as well, and it's just like we're kind of just living life. Jessica Jones is a perfect example of what it means to be a superhero. Like she just tries to do her thing. Daredevil is a lawyer, and he's not even rich. Like that should tell you something. Like right there, like Daredevil and Jessica Jones are like the perfect examples of like, I'm just trying to be an effing superhero. Spider-Man's another great one. Like I'm a fucking kid, man. Like I don't know what to do. I ain't got money like that. I'm barely buying sandwiches. That's life. That's real life as a superhero in the Marvel Universe. It's like, you're either Tony Stark or you fucked, and that's about it. So I like the way they handled it, and it was really entertaining to watch. So I'm excited to see how that plays out as we go forward. We have, of course, the Flag Smashers and stuff, and how I think that's supposed to lead into Baron Zemo. I'm curious about this whole super soldier thing where this guy seemed to have, obviously he had superpowers. Like when he dropped down, I was like, okay, he's got powers. He's superhuman. Seems normal though. It seemed like it was purely strength and possibly speed. We have to see what else he can do. But I'm like, okay, I doubt it's the super soldier serum because the whole point of that is only Captain America ever did it right. And after that, it was failed experiment after failed experiment. That's literally how the Hulk exists. Like if you didn't know that, that's why we have the Hulk. So everything that big that happens in the Marvel Universe is always like, man, we really just want to make superhumans. And then they always screw it up because no one can truly get it right. So I'm curious how they're going to do that. There is precedence for it. Oddly enough, in Jessica Jones, they did it where they had a character. I can't think of his comic book name now. But if you saw Jessica Jones, the crazy guy that was taking the pills, that's actually branching off from a super soldier thing in Captain America, where in the comic books, at some point, somebody ended up making pills that basically mimic the super soldier serum. They just couldn't make it a permanent thing that stayed within your body. But they made pills that did the same thing. It just, it was temporary, of course. So they could do that. And they could just say that Baron Zemo found a way to make it, or whoever actually does, if he's involved or not with the Flag Smashers. That could be something that they introduce or reintroduce. We'll see what happens with them bringing over the Netflix stuff. But there's precedence for it in the comics where it's like that could totally happen. It could be a temporary thing. It could be pill based. It could be anything. He could just have powers, and that's just how it is. Like I'm sure we'll get an explanation for it, but I'm excited for that. I'm excited for them to actually introduce Falcon and the Winter Soldier as a team, because they literally don't even talk to each other in this episode, which I thought was interesting. I was like, okay, that's actually kind of cool. So they're separate as of now. Bucky wasn't even at the Smithsonian when they actually did the conference, which kind of makes sense. It would be like everyone's kind of like, yo, ain't that the dude that killed a bunch of people? Like, so why would he be there? But I like the way his stuff was handled, him having the flashbacks, him trying to make amends, taking over the woman's car and stuff, and then, giving the info to the cops, and it's like, look, I'm not here to kill you or anything like that, but I have to kind of make amends for the crappy stuff I've done, so you need to go to prison. I got to put you away. So I like how that was handled, and going through this series, I'm excited to see what they do. I think it's going to be a lot more dramatic than people might have expected. Like, I think a lot of people thought it was just going to be classic MCU, but I like what they're doing. Personally, I'm just very excited to see how they handle the drama, because they can do it well. And of course, if it's done well, then that's more entertaining than being like, oh, it's another bombastic action thing, which they do right, and it's definitely fun, which we got in the beginning of this episode. But I still think we have a lot of potential for this, and it's only 6 episodes, so it's not 9 like WandaVision, but every episode is also going to be close to an hour. Like this, I believe, was 49 minutes, and the credits were not 6 minutes long like WandaVision, so it wasn't nearly as long. So typically the time is the actual time of the episode. That's nice. They probably got a lot of feedback where people are like, why the F are the credits 6 minutes long every week? So they probably got a little bit of feedback on that. So the credits are a couple of minutes, but it's not like, I don't think it is, at least. I don't think they went through like 6 straight minutes, but I could be wrong. But I'm excited for it. I thought it was a really good first episode. I'm excited to see what they do going forward, what they're going to do with Zemo, what they're going to do with the Flag Smashers, how they're going to explain the superpower stuff. Just the concept of, obviously, the end of the episode, new Captain America, which I assume is going to be U.S. agent. He came out, if you didn't notice, he does have a gun. That's the kind of the thing with his character. Is like, he's not really superhuman. He's just a dude that takes up the mantle. And also, I forgot to mention this. I'm curious how many people this show may or may not upset. Because I feel like, and this may or may not be obvious, but I feel like they may or may not lead into some slight racial territory with like, oh, Black Captain America, White Captain America. They did in the comic books, and I'm just curious how far they're gonna go with that, because it's an easy thing to do, and I believe it's accurate, but I think they're also gonna have a lot of people, if they do that, who are gonna be like, nobody would care if Captain America was black and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't know. We'll see how far they go with it, but I'm very curious. They had like one line in here where Sam was like, you don't mess with these white folk like that. And it just made me laugh because I'm like, oh, they can do it, but will they go that far? And also, they swear a lot in this. They, like, one division was like, oh, it's upbeat and stuff. They're like, shit. So it's definitely darker. It's definitely more mature. But I am curious how far they're going to go with some of the political stuff and how far they really want to push it. And I think they could do very simple stuff. Like, they almost have to bring it up. Because it would be, for me personally, I think it would be weird if they don't have a single point where someone doesn't be like, Captain America's white. Like, even if it's a different person, I know that probably seems insane, but someone would totally say that. Like that's just legit. Like, if you think no one would ever say that, you're an idiot. So they have to put that in the show somewhere, and I'm just curious, like, how many people are going to get, like, super upset, like, oh, it's super woke that they had to mention it. It's like, we'll see what happens, but I'm excited for the show. Outside of that I'm just curious, because I think it'll make me laugh. It'll be funny just to see people complain, but overall, I'm very excited for the show. I can't wait to see just how things end up playing out. Based on the trailers, he gets the shield back, so I'm very curious about that one. I'm like, how does that conversation play out? Like, you can't have the shield. Like, I gave it to the Smithsonian. The one dude, this is super effed up too. The guy who shook his hand in the beginning of the episode was like, thanks for giving us the shield. He's like, you made the right choice. He's the dude that's doing the press conference at the end. It's like, here's your new Captain America. And I didn't realize that he had, like, the actual shield, because they show him in the trailers when he's doing, like, the parade thing on, like, the football field. I didn't know he had, like, Cap's actual shield, because I just assumed, I assumed Sam had it, and so then it was like they just made him a new shield. But he came out and it was like the actual Smithsonian Captain America shield, and I was like, that's disrespectful, not just to Sam, but like in general. That's super disrespectful just to like the actual original Captain America. Like, you couldn't make this dude like a new shield when the old guy died. Like, I get that admittedly it is vibranium, is like an insanely important shield, and it can do like a whole lot of stuff. But I'm just like, that's just disrespectful to the dude that died, because they don't know that he's the old guy now. I'm like, that's just disrespectful to him in general, I felt personally. So I'm like, even not counting Sam and how effed up that was against him, it was like, just the original Captain America, I'm like, you can't just give this dude's shield off to somebody. Like, that's it's a part of him. But at the same time, they're going to do what they're going to do. So we shall see how this show plays out. I'm excited for it. We'll love to know your thoughts. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, least favorite parts about it. And of course, I would love to know your theories on what's going to happen in this show. How are things going to play out? I think the one thing that we know is going to happen, somewhere down the line, is for Bucky, he's going to end up telling that guy that he was the Winter Soldier and killed his son. So I'm very curious how that scene's going to play out. I think based on how they've done the show so far, it's one episode, but I think everyone's acting pretty well. That could be a good emotional scene. I think they could do it, and it could work well. Just the scene of him, like, looking at the mochi, and I was like, oh, he's looking at the mochi, and he's getting emotional. He's like, my son used to love the red bean mochi. And I was like, oh, man, this is the dude that, the flashback, this is his son. So I'm like, they could do some good stuff with that, and I don't know how long they'll drag it out, but I'm actually curious how that's going to just play out in the series. But we'd love to know your theories and thoughts on this first episode. So like I said, please put your comments down in the comment section below, and of course, thanks for watching.